Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 72 being recorded on October 28th of 2018, just shortly before Halloween. And first of all, thank you to Marcus, who, when he saw the tweet from last week that episode 71 was coming out, said that he was looking forward to finding out more about Mr. Wolf. So yeah, we will be getting back to that story soon, but this week I've got a special scary story just for Halloween, and so that's what we're going to go with. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. This is the YouTube version video that I'm making, and then I will clean up the audio and put it out as a podcast. And here we go. The Wish Out the Window. Andy had a stomach ache. It had started a couple of weeks ago, on and off, and had gotten worse and worse. School didn't help it, basketball didn't help it, sleep didn't help it. He knew why. Rudy was coming home. Rudy was his older brother, older by 5 years. He would probably be about done with college if that was Randy's way, but it wasn't. Rudy, taller even than Andy, thin but with muscles from years of doing who know what, skin that seemed to remain pale even at the end of a summer running around with his friends, and pale blue eyes that never seemed to be doing anything but scowling. Rudy, who never missed a reason to make Andy miserable. Rudy was coming home from prison. He'd done a few little things as a juvenile, but a break-in at a closed dollar store, of all places to rob, got him in prison for what turned out to be 3 years. Andy's parents, and especially Andy's mom, were getting ready to welcome him home. We've got to love him. We've got to let him know that this is still his home. We've got to all make him welcome. Andy didn't want to do any of that. He'd enjoyed going through high school without his bigger brother. Since Rudy had graduated, barely, before he started, no one really knew that his brother was in prison. He didn't talk about Rudy to anyone. He didn't lie exactly, but Andy figured that a lot of his friends thought he was an only child. The ones who knew didn't seem to want to know any details, which was fine by Andy. He was trying to forget himself. But the parole board had granted it, so Rudy was coming back home. 1 year left, 1 year before graduation, and then I'd be off myself, Andy thought. I could be free. But he had to go get parole at the first hearing. Mom was overjoyed. She said the prisons were too full and they had to let her boy out and let the real criminals stay in. Andy did not scoff at that, but he wanted to. He remembered the humiliations, the punishments, the lying, the hitting. He remembered his pet fish dying. He remembered his favorite toys being thrown on the roof. All of it from Rudy, and laughed off by Mom, who seemed to think Rudy could do no wrong. Or ignored by Dad, always so busy with his business, a small legal firm. He tried to will himself to calm down so his stomach wouldn't hurt. It helped, a little, for now. He ate some of the dinner, the parts that were less likely to upset his stomach, and then went upstairs to his room. He was feeling a little queasy. The evenings were getting cooler. He opened a window and breathed the clean air. It settled his stomach, though the ache remained. He lost track of time, trying to relax as the sun went down and the air grew ever cooler. He thought about what was going to happen, what he'd gone through with Rudy, and what he might have to go through again. He started to get nauseous. I just want him to go away, Andy said, out to the darkness. His stomach turned and he retched out the window. He panted, looking down into the dark backyard where his sick had disappeared into the gloom. I just want him gone, he repeated. Granted, said a voice. It was soft, male, and carefully enunciated. Andy couldn't tell if it was close by or if it was far, carried on the night air. He pulled his head in and slammed down the window, locking it and pulling the drapes closed. In a way, it was a relief when Rudy did come home. Not that it was pleasurable. Rudy came through the door from the garage, having been driven home by their mom, saw Andy, and said, "Spurt." Spurt was Rudy's unflattering nickname for him. It quickly brought back the power dynamic he'd known with his big brother for all his life. "Hey, Rudy," Andy said, managing a modicum of politeness. He just looked at Rudy, not really wanting to say anything else. Then he grabbed an apple and headed up to his room. The stomach ache was finally gone. The dread of waiting was over. Even if Rudy started tormenting him, it wouldn't matter. He would graduate this year, and since his parents hadn't had to send Rudy to college, they could afford to do so for Andy. That's what he told himself anyway. "Hey, Spurt, how's school going for Mommy's favorite?" Rudy asked him the next Saturday morning. "Fine," Andy said, looking to avoid trouble. "Fine," Rudy imitated. "Sounds like those classes are a waste of time for you. I ask you a question, you spurt out one word." "What do you want me to say?" Andy said flatly. "Wah, meh, 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 meh," Rudy parroted. "Oh, man, they would eat you up in the joint." "You managed," Andy retorted. "Yeah," Rudy said. "I managed. I'm twice the man you'll ever be." Andy said in a way it was clearly meant that he had his doubts, but didn't dare voice them. That was enough for Rudy to smirk, knowing he had won. The hitting started shortly afterward. Rudy would flick his ear or thump his back harder than needed. It was bad when their parents were in the room, worse when they weren't. Andy started to lock his bedroom door and let his mom know that he would be doing so. "Rudy's just feeling cooped up. He'll settle down soon," his mom said. "I'm feeling cooped up," Andy muttered as he walked back to his room. The unease and stress was bad, though Andy somehow managed not to have the stomach aches he was getting before Rudy's arrival. He tried to bury himself in his schoolwork. Rudy would sometimes bang on his door, usually just to upset him. If Rudy felt cooped up, he released himself quickly. Strange young men started picking Rudy up in their cars, and Rudy would be gone for hours, then days. Andy didn't mind. Rather, he relished the times when Rudy would be gone and he could just be himself. One night, he heard a noise at his window. Since it was getting dark so early, he hadn't bothered opening the drapes. Since he had closed the night, he'd heard the strange voice. It was a light scratching, like a branch being moved against the glass by the wind. But there was no tree close enough to his window to touch it. Thinking it might be a bird or bat, Andy cautiously opened the drapes. On the outside of the window, there was an old-style Polaroid picture. It was stuck to the glass. The odd noises had stopped. The Polaroid was a close-up of someone's eye, wide open. Andy stepped back, shocked. He didn't know how or why someone would stick a Polaroid to his window like that. He was on the second floor. They would have to use a ladder or maybe stuck the picture using a long pole. That must have been the noise he had heard. Then a thought struck him. "Rudy," he whispered aloud. It would be just like his brother to stick some dumb random picture to his window just to scare him. Rudy had been gone a couple of days this time. He was probably coming home and using the fact that Andy didn't know he was around to prank him. He moved closer to the picture. He figured Rudy had found, or maybe stolen, an old Polaroid and taken a close-up of his own eye. It did look like Rudy's eye. Blue, very pale blue with pasty skin, though it looked like the picture was overexposed, so the real skin and even eye color might be different. Andy looked down at the backyard. He couldn't see anyone down there, nor any ladder or pole. Not that he expected to, necessarily. He also saw some small specks on the picture. Dirt? Maybe Rudy had dropped the picture while getting his little trick ready? Andy stalked out of his room, calling for his mom. She was downstairs in the kitchen, putting away some dishes. "Your dad's home and he's trying to sleep. Keep it down," his mom admonished. "Sorry. Is Rudy home?" Andy asked point blank. "Not that I know of. Did you hear something?" she asked. "I think he played a trick on me," Andy said. "There's a picture taped to my window." What?" his mom asked, slightly distracted. The dishwasher was empty. She closed the door. "There's a picture on your window?" "Yeah, a dumb one. I think of Rudy's eyeball." His mom looked askance. "Why don't you show me this picture?" Andy shrugged and beckoned her to follow. The picture was still there, but the specks now had rings around them, damaging the picture. It was still clearly of an eyeball, but it was now hard to tell much else about it. "It's damaged," Andy's mom said unnecessarily. Andy looked closer. "There were some tiny bits on it, dirt or something. Now I guess they've damaged the picture. Really fast, though. I didn't see those rings even a couple of minutes ago when I came down to find you." His mom straightened up. "Yeah, let's go see if Rudy is here." And I want to know how this picture got all the way up there regardless. I also want to know if the paint on the house got scratched doing it. His mom opened the window and reached underneath to tug the picture off the glass. There's some grit or something on this, all right, she confirmed, wiping the face of the picture. The picture didn't seem to be recoverable. The damage was permanent. Looked like Rudy did it? His mom asked. Yeah, no real way to tell, though, even before the circles. Andy's mom went outside to look at the outside of the house with a flashlight. You stay in, she advised. Andy waited, a little embarrassed. Shouldn't he be helping her? Until she got back. Nothing to see, she said. No ladder, no poles, no footprints, no damage to the house. If this is Rudy, it's a pretty poor joke. Maybe it wasn't Rudy, Andy thought. Maybe it was that voice. The one who promised to make Rudy disappear. But he couldn't say it. He knew how crazy it would sound, and Andy thought with a twinge of shame it would be his fault. He was the one who wished it. The moment fizzled away. Andy closed his drapes very tightly and managed, after a long time, to get some sleep. The next night it was worse. Andy heard the same scratching noise at the window. This time he was quick, but not, it seemed, quick enough. He threw open the drapes and, seeing a picture, didn't look at it, but instead tried to look down in the backyard. He saw nothing unusual, so instead he looked at the picture. He gagged. He scrambled back away from the window. "Mom!" he yelled. He ran out of his room and almost into her, who'd come running at the tone in his voice. "Another picture!" Andy yelled, spun around and scrambled back into his room. It was another picture, another Polaroid. In it, Rudy could be seen, strapped down to a chair and looking frightened. The picture had more specks on it. Andy's mom threw open the window and snagged the picture. The circles were already appearing around the specks. She wiped them off, but the circles continued to spread. "Let me take a picture," Andy said, grabbing his phone. He took a bunch of pictures to make sure. The police were called in, but they found nothing. Other than his mom's footprints and fingerprints, nothing was found outside. The police set up surveillance equipment in the backyard. It was designed to automatically capture footage of anyone entering the backyard. That night, a third picture was stuck to Andy's window. The surveillance gear never saw anyone. In it, behind small circles of damage that were expanding by the second, Rudy was strapped to the same chair. His throat was cut, and he was covered in blood. His body was never found. He had disappeared. And there was never another picture taped to Andy's window, though he listened every night for months. He never told anyone about the wish he made out the window, or the voice he had heard answering it. And that's the story for this week. Next week, I have a couple of story ideas for short stories that might be like, one episode a story, so I might do that. Or I might go back to Connections and continue that storyline. Haven't quite decided yet. Obviously, I'll have to make a decision pretty soon. Time's always ticking with a situation like this. Got to get an episode out every week. So, hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share it on Facebook, Twitter, social media. Let people know about it. Always appreciate that. Appreciate reviews on iTunes as well, or any other place that you think of. I really appreciate that. So until next time, thanks for listening, and have a good week. Words and music, copyright 2018, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved.